In 2014, Grant Stahla, then a senior enrolled in the University of Nebraska's Agribusiness Entrepreneurship program, launched a portable restroom trailer company.
So I was talking to some family over on the East Coast when I visited them during a winter break, and they said, "Have you ever heard of a restroom trailer?" And I'd never been in a porta potty. I'd never seen a restroom trailer, no clue what that was, but I was intrigued because it's like, who doesn't need to use the restroom?
Nearly a decade later, he would meet his now wife, Erin, on a dating app. Together, they decided to ditch the opportunity to own their own Chick-fil-A and are still building that restroom trailer business and a whole lot more. So I'm jumping right in. You're at the University of Nebraska. It's like 2013, 2014, and you're in an entrepreneurial class. And take me down the road of how did you, I'm going to say settle, maybe wrong choice of words, but how did you get into portable restroom business through that class?
Yeah. So going through the university, it's figuring out what the different options were, when you graduate high school and you're trying to figure out your life. That's kind of where I was. And I grew up in a family of people that ran their own small businesses. And I didn't really know that was unusual, but there's 13 different family members that own their own little small business. And when I say small, it's, they have 1 or 2 or 3 employees. And it's something that in our industry, a lot of us can relate to, because that's where a lot of us are at or we're recently at. So I was just going through college and then studying business and looking for, am I supposed to be a financial advisor or a lawyer or a, insurance salesman or a manager, and kind of went down those routes, thinking about, I worked at insurance a little bit, and I was a manager at Gallup, the polling organization, at one of their call centers. And
I saw you were there for a very short stint.
Yep. Yeah. It started with a short internship. And
was that one of those situations where you realized what you didn't want to do?
Yes.
Yeah. I was there too. It was called the U.S. Navy. I spent 4 years figuring out that's what I didn't want to do. But so can we go back just a little bit? You started to talk about you had multiple family members running their own small businesses. Where was home? Are you from Nebraska?
From Nebraska. Yep. I was always in the Midwest. I was born in Kansas, and we moved to a few different states, Colorado, Mississippi, California, Virginia, but the majority of time is Kansas and Nebraska. And most of the family members, they had mobile home parks. They sold and flipped mobile homes, and they had a bunch of renters, and so that's kind of how I grew up is real estate and single family homes. That was just the Stahla name is synonymous with mobile homes. And so that's my dad kind of led our family in flipping houses. As we grew up, we'd move into a foreclosed house with trash up to our knees, and then work on it and get it nice, and then buy a little bit nicer house with trash up to our knees again, but it was bigger, and clean it and make it nice again and sell it. And so that was just like, I definitely credit parents to just normalizing, this is how you think creatively. This is how you think about, a business transaction in your personal life, and make it so that you don't have to work for someone if you're not supposed to.
I think it's interesting. I listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts, and typically it's the exact opposite. My dad was a teacher, my mother was a scientist, or my father was a lawyer, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. Or seldom do you hear, I learned it from my parents. Your parents were essentially flipping houses before it was cool, before you could ship games and get a TV show from it, which is pretty cool, because I actually love real estate as well. So I like that background.
Yeah.
But you still, so were you a good student?
I was fine.
Be honest here.
I was probably a B student. I didn't really like school, and Erin, we both were kind of similar in that we just needed to get through it. So yeah, I was just ready to rock and roll with the business.
Did you know that's another very entrepreneurial trait, is to be not in love with school and a very average student? I'm not making that up. Typically, entrepreneurs have ADHD really bad, which is why I should never be a podcast host, because I'm always wanting to ask another question and interrupt you. But I'm letting you run your course here. So we got through your childhood. You've got parents who taught you what it's like to work hard and flip houses and learn what it's like to have your own business. So you jump in, you go to University of Nebraska, and you're in this entrepreneurial program. Yeah. And you still, I guess that was the root of the question, is how did you fall into restrooms? Because that's not typically something where you're like, I know what I want to do and it's going to be great and I'm going to be successful. Portable toilets. It's just not.
Right. And I'm guessing this is somewhat of a similar story to a lot of us in the sanitation industry. And same with Erin, is you just kind of, it's an opportunity and then you go for it. And so I was actually in 4 classes, entrepreneurship classes, within 2 different programs at the University of Nebraska. There was a more of a business focused program where people were building apps and bars, like ideas for bars and golf courses, and then there was an agricultural program that I was a part of also, and they were figuring out smart ear tags for cattle to check if they're healthy, and custom haying and things like that. So it's kind of a fun intersection, like you get some in the Midwest or in different states where you have the intersection. And so there was different ideas where retrofitting shipping containers. There was taking a bumper pull trailer and making it an entertainment trailer that would have a bathroom in it, and then a kitchen and entertainment area. There was retrofitting shipping containers as tiny homes.
These were all your ideas, or these were like a conglomeration of ideas from all the students, or these were specific to you?
They were specific to me. It was something that I was doing, and I was leading each little group in each class, trying to figure out, like, I actually want to do something. You want to start something. And so I was trying to think, like, what would actually work? I could build something with my own 2 hands and figure out what would actually work. And then so that entertainment trailer idea has a bathroom in it. And so I was talking to some family over on the East Coast when I visited them during a winter break, and they said, have you ever heard of a restroom trailer? And I'd never been in a porta potty. I'd never seen a restroom trailer, no clue what that was. But I was intrigued because it's like, who doesn't need to use the restroom? And then also, this sounds like an opportunity to maybe build something myself, or have this higher level of service for people. And so 10 days later, I bought my first trailer, a 3-stall from Forest River.
So you get your first trailer, you buy your first trailer from Forest River.
Yep.
Where do you get, like, who's backing you on this?
Yeah. So I was, first of all, I was looking for financing through a state-sponsored financing group. It was the Nebraska Enterprise Fund, and they do microloans. And I was looking to get a little loan through them where they would subsidize the bank and take some of the risk. But I was telling my grandparents about my idea, and they offered to loan me my first $30,000 to buy the $23,000 3-stall restroom trailer from Forest River. So I took them up on that, and I was so grateful. Yes. So thankful, and did not take that lightly.
Startup capital or cash flow is always a huge, in my opinion, the biggest problem for a startup. Did you feel that same thing?
Yes, absolutely. Especially with specialty trailers and then buying pump trucks.
Yeah. Not only do you need the trailer, were you subbing out the service to begin with, or did you get all in and realize, okay, well, I got to be able to clean these things out?
Yep. Yeah. Bought a trailer and then realized I needed a vacuum truck.
Are you attending North America's premier wastewater event? The Wet Show, taking place February 18th to the 20th in Indianapolis, Indiana, features an expansive expo hall, showcases new products and services, provides networking opportunities with peers, and sessions for continuing education hours with industry-leading experts. Register now to attend Wet Show at wetshow.com. That's WWETTSHOW.com. Where were you finding information to start with? Were you just researching on the internet and flying by the seat of your pants? Did you join an association? Were you reading trade publications? Did you go to any shows, or were you literally just kind of trying to figure it out by doing it?
Well, one of my main sources was reading pro magazines. So I read a bunch of past issues of pro magazines and read the stories. And then that was how I figured out I needed a vacuum truck. And then also just talking to industry professionals as I was looking for a vacuum truck, I spoke with a guy that sold his company for $5 million in Denver. This was like 25 years ago or 20 years ago. And so I had 4 pages of notes front to back of here's how you start a portable toilet company. And he had a few restroom trailers. So that was my big, jump in. We cleaned a porta potty together, an old fiberglass unit with a 5-gallon bucket and a big scrubber. And he showed me how to pump a toilet and how to work the vacuum truck. Unfortunately, the truck that I bought from him imploded because the tank was so thin. The first time I turned the vacuum on, the tank imploded. So that was a bummer.
Tank, and it had run its course.
Yep, through the oil fields in North Dakota, and then down in Texas before that.
So what year is this? When is this all still like 2013, 2014?
14.
This is 14. And are you still a student at this time, or are you doing this full time?
Still a student. Yep, I was going into my senior year as I was starting this.
So when do you make the transition from student to full time Stahla?
Yeah, so winter. So I had 1 year after starting it, the winter of, or the beginning January of 2014, I started it, and then I graduated end of 2014. And then I found a shop space at the end of the year there, and I lived in it for a few months and bought a foreclosed house, and then moved into the house and started working on that, get a bunch of roommates, and then that's when just started buying more flushing porta potties and restroom trailers and a better vacuum truck, and getting loans from the bank. And
so this was all built primarily on loans then, and hoping you had the cash flow to pay them.
Exactly. Yeah. And just beginning, starting from zero as far as my own personal knowledge. A lot of my family members have built their businesses with mostly cash and not a lot of loans. And so I thought I would be really cool and grow faster and get a lot of loans, and learned a lot through the process. I've been in the business just over a decade, and in the last 3.5 years with Erin, and we've kind of transitioned a lot of our philosophy with financials and how we do stuff. But the beginning was very, very leveraged.
So you said you had roommates. I caught that. Yeah. When does Erin become the roommate?
Yeah. So Erin and I, we met in May of 21. And so that was in Lincoln, Nebraska. We met on a dating app. And so yeah, she was working at Chick-fil-A at the time, and so eventually kicked out the guy roommates, and we got married in 9 months, right? Met and married in 9 months. And then, so we've been running the business together since then.
So Erin, you came into the picture just pretty recently, and you were at Chick-fil-A handling a marketing role. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. Started as the marketing director at one Chick-fil-A location, and then kind of kept progressing there until Grant and I met.
What was your background? So were you also university? No, you guys never met in school. You just met as adults, basically, in your late 20s, I'm guessing?
Yeah, actually, we're just in our early 30s. So we're both 31 for a few more days.
Late 20s, though, is what I was saying. Yep.
Yep. Gotcha. So we went to separate colleges, and then I had gone to Northwestern College in Iowa, and then kind of went a couple different places. Then came from Denver, Colorado, back to Lincoln, where Grant was at the time. Was working at Chick-fil-A, and then that's where we met. So it was a few years after college.
So what was your role at Chick-fil-A, and how did you parlay that into what you do now for Stahla?
Yeah. I started as marketing director, and then by the time I left, I was the president just of that location. Learned so much in the years that I was there. So grateful for my time there. I was on track I was going through the application process that Chick-fil-A had to become an owner operator of my own location. But then it was actually, we started dating, got engaged, married, and it was on our honeymoon that we were discussing, is a Chick-fil-A route something that, we would want to pursue together? Would I kind of like handle Chick-fil-A and then Grant would still continue with Stahla Services? And we just kind of ended up thinking like our days would be too split. So that's kind of on our honeymoon. I remember we're out on a paddleboard in the ocean and we're kind of discussing like, how do we want to do this? And then just, I think a few weeks after that, I withdrew my application from Chick-fil-A, and it wasn't much longer after that I went full time in the business.
So likewise, Grant had zero experience in the portable restroom business. I can assume that what was your upbringing? Like, where did you come from? You weren't portable restroom savvy either, I assume.
Right. Yeah. I had some experience, not necessarily with portable restrooms, but I grew up on a ranch in Northeast Nebraska, which was just an incredible experience, great family. And similar to Grant, my parents worked together, and, just seeing that with my aunts and uncles and grandparents, it's just been something that I've been used to seeing. So that was something really cool to have in common, just seeing that as you're growing up. And then I was really praying for somebody, who had an interest in trailers, but I didn't really specify what kind of trailer. So I was used to horse trailers. You're preferring
like a horse or cattle trailer.
Right. Yeah. End up with the restroom trailer. I guess being specific in your prayers matters, but I'm glad this has been such an incredible experience. And the sanitation industry is just a really great community.
So let's go backward a little bit, and whoever wants to answer these questions, or if you want to answer them together, it's entirely up to you. But so we kind of went really quickly. We talked about, you needed capital to grow. You had a trailer. How quick was your growth pattern here? I mean, let's go back to 2014. You had a trailer. How quickly, did you start to have 2 trailers, 3 trailers, 4 trailers, and what does that look like?
Yep. So the first year I had a 3-stall Forest River, and then I sold that, and I bought 2 Jag trailers. So I bought 2 4-stalls from Jag the second year, and I bought a new or a used 2007 Hino from Crescent Tank Manufacturing from Robert Genome. And I thought that truck was the coolest thing in the world because the tank was new. And then I bought an 8-stall and a 2-stall the next year. And
so you're up to 5?
Yep, the next year. And then I bought a couple more 2-stalls and another 4-stall the next year. So it basically. Were you buying these
in anticipation of demand or for actual demand?
No, it was all anticipation. So it was all a guess. And definitely had to learn a lot about the restroom and shower trailer industry and the specialty trailer industry, as we've been in business for 11 years and we've just basically done trailers. I had up to 80 flushing porta potties from 5 Peaks, which now Satellite owns.
Correct.
It was recirculating flushing with sinks, and I put little motion lights and trash cans and paper towel dispensers and soap dispensers, and even a vial for a rose or flowers that you could put in there.
What year is this?
That was 14 and 15.
So you're still just 2 years old.
Yeah. So we put together our first units, and then so I bought 5 units initially in beginning of 14. I put them together with my best friend Brian Richard, and then the next year, or that same year, later in the year, I got a business loan from a bank and got 25 more units. And then I got 50 more units the year after, and we stayed at 80 for a while. So your business
loan was it like an open line of credit?
It was actually a SBA 7A loan. So pretty much all of our loans are SBA 7A loans, which works really well because the bank is covered up to the last, I think, up to the last 20% if we do go under. So then they're more incentivized to give us a note.
So you've got, in my estimation now at this point, you're pretty in debt because you've got 5, 6, 7 trailers, 100 flushing units, and those aren't inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing a lot of this just based on forecasting or hoping for the demand in the future. And it all comes together. Did it come together because of geography, marketing? What do you owe the success to? Because you're becoming pretty successful right off the bat. A lot of that sometimes has to do with geography because you're in the right area at the right time.
So we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is 250,000 people. And then there's Omaha, that's another like 750. So we had about 1 million people population wise. And I was targeting the specialty and niche, kind of the event industry. So 6 months on, 6 months off for events in our area. And it was just a struggle. It's been a struggle the entire time up until the last, 3 years. Erin and I have made a lot of changes to make it so we're a year-round company to be consistently profitable. But I would say that the first, really for the first decade, it's just been a real struggle because of the cyclical nature, and then me kind of being stubborn with, all right, I'm just doing trailers. So I ended up selling the flushing porta potties 5 years in and just focusing on trailers. And when Erin and I were dating, like 4 years ago, we were actually looking for new locations in Kansas City and Denver. We'd been working with those areas a little bit more, but we got big locations in KC, Missouri, and Denver, Colorado. And so we kind of focused on expanding into higher population, and then just focusing on specialty trailers and being able to go nationwide with those trailers.
Kansas City and Denver, when you talk about Kansas City and Denver expanding, you're just kind of expanding that I-80 corridor based on where you lived.
Yep.
They seem like still seasonal locations to me.
Mm-hmm.
You had talked about we were so cyclical, based 6 months on, 6 months off. I guess my thought would have been let's go someplace warmer to try and get out of that seasonality. Instead, you just chased the population. What made you go that direction?
Erin, you want to speak to this?
Why we're going to Denver. Yeah. So we really wanted to make sure that we're kind of continuing to expand out. And we really great kind of chose locations based on, what's enjoyable. So we really enjoy skiing and doing a lot of outdoor sports.
It's a write-off. You just write it off.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what they say. So that was kind of one of the reasons. And then, going towards population for sure was a big deal. And just trying to figure out what the next locations are. I think it was really interesting too within the location choices. I had already had connections there as well, so it's kind of fun to kind of see how everything started to tie together in those areas. So it's nice. We I think would recommend that you have locations that you can get to fairly easily. We find ourselves in Kansas City more often just because it's close. But yeah, for anyone trying to figure out, okay, where's my next location? We're thinking, like dense population. We're thinking, can I get there, quickly if needed? So that's kind of some of the thought process.
Doesn't that cause management problems or not really? I mean, we've kind of, since COVID, we've all kind of grown into a remote world. We're doing this podcast in different cities via a Meet. But in a business like this, to keep your quality control and cleanliness and service to the levels you want it to be, I would think there has to be massive obstacles in finding the right people to put in these places.
Yeah, I mean, we say everything rises and falls on leadership. So we want to make sure that we're positioning our people for absolute success. So we've also been of the mindset of hire slow and fire fast. That's something that we're embracing more and more. So our hiring process is something that we've really dove into, and we're continuing to hone in on that process. So we have multiple interviews that people go through. We go culture first, and then, are they fit to do the job? And that's how we've really come to find our most successful people. And right now we're sitting with a team that is just incredible. Something you kind of hope to have one day. So we're really grateful for that. But we put in a lot of different processes of, we have a head of operations that's, make sure to keep good contact with every single location. We're visiting each location, just to stay in touch with those folks. We have trimester reviews. So, if nothing else, people are getting great feedback 3 times a year. And we're just making sure that we have those built-in touch points. And I mentioned our interview process. It's something that we continue to make tweaks to. From there, we even roll into a 30, 60, 90-day review process. So once somebody's hired, it's not like, hey, good luck, you did some training and we hope it goes well. We're continue to be hands-on and just asking, how's your experience? Do you feel fit for the job? Do you understand how this whole thing works? What questions do you have? What areas are we needing to get better at? And so we really try to keep that communication flowing throughout the entire process and just make sure that we have relationship with our team. We create strong relationships with our team member to team member so that level stays really strong, and then just continual checkpoints of great feedback.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but your answer to that question seemed like Chick-fil-A may have laid a lot of the groundwork to understand how this process should work properly. Is that a fair assumption? And if not, it wasn't meant to diminish, obviously, a good setup you guys have, but it sounds very smart and it sounds very Chick-fil-A.
No, I think that's a fair assumption to say the least, Jeff. But yeah, we've definitely gleaned a lot from my time at Chick-fil-A, and then built upon it, just knowing like, okay, here's how Chick-fil-A did it. Here's how Stahla is doing it. How do we want to like combine the best of all worlds, and how do we become the best at like onboarding a team member, creating a success for them? Because, while somebody's getting hired, when they're in their interview process, when they're, just training, that's such a vulnerable place for somebody to be. And that's where the company can really, step up and create that support system and say, really like link arms, and you can really determine if somebody's going to be a great fit in that time, if the interview process didn't prove it out already, which it should have, and just really creating that moment of like, hey, we're in this together. You don't know everything because, hey, you were just hired, and that's okay. But how do we make sure that within, a set amount of time, you feel like an expert, and we can keep building on that together?
Nice strategy. So your role or your title, from what I saw, is marketing, but clearly you sound more like an HR ops manager type to me. So explain to me, is that, do you both wear that hat, or is that primarily you?
Yeah, so we have an accountability chart that like we've really laid out and try to figure out like who's going to be best in what roles. So Grant and I have a lot of similar skill sets. So we're both kind of in the marketing seat, but if two people are doing one job, then really nobody's doing that job. So we've kind of delineated it out to like Grant's, the back end of marketing. He really loves like just really eats up like SEO, maximizing our website. He loves that part of it. And then I'm more so the content creation, the forward facing marketing. So we've kind of like figured out those roles. And then I'm more org development. So thinking through like hiring, recruiting, firing, onboarding, training, 30, 60, 90-day reviews, like how do we have success there? So those are a couple of our different roles. Of course, being in a small family owned business, you get to do everything. And so we've been in operations recently. We know how to drive the trailers. So we, really keep close tabs on what's going on throughout the full cycle of the business, because we've really come to find that the more information the better decisions you can make. And that just benefits the entire company. So when you're out driving a trailer to a set, you're not just driving a trailer to a set, right? You're assessing what's the process, what are we doing here, how can we make this better? And
well, that's exactly how I stated. How are you managing these new cities? Because and you answered the question, but that's very difficult unless you can trust who you've got in those positions, which it sounds like you
Absolutely.
can. So I want to go back just a little bit, because we kind of fast forwarded. At what point were you profitable right off the bat?
Oh, for sure. Is it everyone?
It's super easy. Tons of cash flow. No, I wasn't. So it's kind of tough when you have such an asset heavy business, and because you can show some profit, but then after that you're paying yourself, and then you have to also pay loans. So with there being such a high amount of principal on loans that isn't accounted for on the P&L, but it is on the cash flow, we were showing profit most of the years, but then it's like, where did all of our money go? And right. I think that's kind of a common thing. Our head of finance, Mike, has done a really good job of building out a cash flow report so that we can actually see, okay, maybe our P&L is showing that we have a 15% profit this month, but then cash flow wise, maybe it's a net zero right. because we're still paying loans. So yes, we were mostly profitable, but cash flow negative.
So how many years would you say did it take you before you got to a position where you were paying yourself an honest wage and you weren't concerned about cash flow or the P&L showing a negative number or, all of those things? Or are you still in that position and you're...
Yeah, those are different years for sure. I would say the first year I didn't pay myself anything. The second year I paid myself $5,000. The third year I paid myself $5,000. But also my business was paying for the truck, for the diesel, for my cell phone bill, for my internet. I was living pretty cheap, and I had roommates paying me $10,000 a year for my house. So I do renovations out of that budget. And
the reason I asked that is because, again, so you were there, but you needed supplemental help. You were doing some other things. You were living, thinly, for lack of a better way to put it. So everyone always looks at a lot of these businesses on the surface, especially if you're not in this industry or any entrepreneurial industry, and you think, well, wow, they got successful really fast and really easy, and it's just never that way.
No,
because you're looking at, you've been doing this a little over a decade now. So would you say you were 4, 5, 6 years in before you felt comfortable?
No, up until this last year. So when Erin and I got married, that's kind of when we made a big push to cleaning up efficiencies. So I had a model of I wanted to be in 50 locations, 50 of the biggest cities in the U.S. Every city about 700,000 people, with a restroom and shower trailer company that was local, because I believe that local companies are who provide the best service. You need a local company. And so that was kind of the model is, okay, it's going to take $250,000 to start up a shop. We can start, 1 to 3 shops every year, and we'll project, 55% growth every year. And with that growth, then this model works. Well, I didn't know what I didn't know. And in our industry, it's so cyclical, it's so specialized, and there isn't very much demand compared to if you're a plumber. So really it's the last 3 years where Erin and I have been making a lot of changes, along with the team have been making a lot of changes to clean up our operations. Our goal is now not to spread out horizontally within the industry, but it's to spread out vertically within the industry. So that's why we're going into different things. Like Erin and I started StahlaLeads.com, where we have an online lead marketplace where sanitation industry people can buy and sell leads that they have. We have Stahla Logistics, where we're also doing brokering of specialty trailers with complicated jobs all over the U.S. So we started that logistics company. And then we're also doing consulting, where we talk to restroom trailer company owners to help them start up their process. So that's restroomtrailerconsulting.com. So we're getting more vertically integrated, and then less horizontally, where our overhead is, we've reduced it a lot. Less people. We went from 23 people to 12 people, including me and Erin, and increased that bottom line. And
currently
3 locations. Yep. We had 4 locations, and we reduced it down to 3 because Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska were 2 geographically similar. So Erin and I have been pushing on that a lot the last 3 years, and the leadership team, the whole team. And now we're finally in a decent spot where it's the fundamentals of business are winning out.
Okay, so you say the fundamentals of business are winning out. I was curious, do all of your geographic locations behave similarly? In other words, is what's popular, what happens in Denver, the same as what happens in Omaha?
Yeah, you would think so. But honestly, it just depends. So there's some points in the year where it feels like, okay, we have, this similar types of jobs in each location. And it might be the same time the following year, and it's, all different things going on at each shop. So you want to be able to find those trend lines, but I think as you keep going, you're going to be able to find those easier and easier. But you just can't predict when, a city reaches out or a storm hits or, things like that. So that's kind of the beauty of being somewhat emergency disaster response based as well.
Well, when you're making forecasts and predicting growth and things like that, I guess that was the nature of that question, is to think, okay, well, we're in Denver now, and we're in Kansas City now, and we're in Omaha now. Well, it should be really easy to move into, so let's say Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And let's say Las Vegas just acts like Las Vegas. It is what it is. I was just curious if scalability was somewhat predictable, and the answer is it depends, which makes sense. But I think there's just still has to probably be some consistency there.
Yeah, and with that, our lesson that we've learned is that we're predicting 0% growth, and then we're requiring profitability. So that's what we're doing. And then Erin and I are buying trailers. We're choosing to buy trailers as there's demand. So we're going to sublet from companies that have those trailers and bring them in up until, okay, we could have used this trailer 10 times over. We know for sure, we have the leads and we have the business to use this trailer. So we're going to buy it. But until then, we're going to use those different vendors to help supplement that and kind of spread out. Like we're going to bring in different players, different vendors all the time, as much as we can, to help spread that overhead and profitability and not count on top line growth.
When you move into these cities, how are you attacking marketing? Maybe in Nebraska, everyone knows Stahla, but they didn't in Denver. So what's your strategy there? Are you jumping in social media? Are you, in my research, I noticed you like to do a lot of collaboration with local news organizations, whether it's print or the television stations. What's your strategy to jump into these cities so people know to call Stahla?
Yeah, we do a lot on Google ads to kind of like set the stage. And then kind of the name of the game for us is like making sure that our overhead stays as low as possible because it is unpredictable. So you want to stay, low overhead as low as possible while just trying to blow it out of the water with marketing and just plan on the first couple of years being rough. Like if they aren't great, you did a good job, you hit the jackpot. But just know, it's going to take a few years to be able to really feel like what you're doing is working.
Even a Google ad budget in a new city, though, can be a scary proposition. I mean, you can drop hundreds, thousands of dollars a day on Google ads, and Google likes to pretend like they're showing you your return. But in my experience, it's not always that accurate. How are you going into a new city and determining your marketing budget?
Yeah, this is really a hot topic for us. We've spent over $1 million on Google ads in the last decade. Time period? In the last decade. Okay. So mostly in the last 5 years.
That doesn't come as a surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're selling a product that no one knows we have. So we found that to be the most effective strategy. But it's a hot topic for us because it's, like you said, there's a lack of clarity from Google ads, and there's an intentional lack of clarity on the internet because they're pushing certain websites, and it's something that we're frustrated by, is that we're getting manipulated by the big players and by Google and by Facebook, and so that's why we created Stahla Leads to have that online marketplace where we can have, if we pay $100 for a lead for someone's information and it ends up being 3 states away and it's a weekend wedding, well, we can't do anything with it, but we still paid $100. And so then we're gonna post that person's information on Stahla Leads and let that local person know that's right there. Hey, we have someone that needs a trailer for this weekend. Here's for $5, you can have their information, give them a quote, and then we're encouraging 2 other vendors to get their information, buy it for $5. And so for $15, 3 different vendors get their information, and they are able to
help
quote
recoup some of that Google investment, which would have otherwise been sunk.
And we can go direct to the local vendor, which is the name of the game. And it's how we help the user. It's how we help the end user, is direct to the local vendor. And then marketing wise, I mean, we should all be helping each other in the industry, but also compensated a little bit, because I'm still outlaying $100 for that lead on Google ads.
Right. You kind of the rising tide raises all ships mentality. But yeah, the Google ads is a slippery slope, especially if you don't understand what you're doing. I mean, Google's in business to make money by selling those advertisements, and they're constantly making recommendations for you to spend more money, but it isn't usually in your best interest. So there's a deep understanding there and a lot of education that can be, you can either teach yourself or hire an expert to help you with. But I like your idea of, sharing those leads, especially when it's a sunk cost once you've got it. So that's an interesting strategy. You mentioned, I think, that you finally feel like you're in let's call it a comfortable place the last couple of years. Where do you see yourself going the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, well, in all transparency, the last, 2, 3 years have been a grind. We've definitely felt the cyclical cycle of, can be a very seasonal business. So we've been just kind of trying to even out the ups and downs on everything. This year has been feeling like, hey, we might see a little bit of a win, which has been exciting, but it's one of those, like, you start to feel that and you need to kind of push a little harder once you start to feel like you can let off, which is the interesting dynamic. I think given that, looking into next year, I mean, we're excited. We're hopeful. It's nice to be out of an election year, to be honest, like that. That's a
consensus in a lot of businesses. And I never felt like I believed in that, but I hear a lot of people talk it.
It's a real thing. Yeah. We were making some good sales beforehand, but then, after the election was done, the next day, the phones start ringing again. So there's definitely something to it. So
yeah, I'm starting to believe it more too, honestly. I'm just like, this can't be a thing, but it is.
It's so interesting. So yeah, looking into 2025, I mean, it's exciting. We're as a company, I think, just feeling more hopeful and ready to take on some bigger challenges. I think the name of the game for us is just going to continue our vertical integration of, how do we get better at our leads website? How do we get better at our website? How do we get better at operations? And at the end of the day, how do we get best at serving the end user? So it all comes down to, like, is the customer happy? Or are they not? So I think when everyone's looking into, like, a new year and setting new goals and annual planning and all of that, it's really easy to start to get fancy with things. And we just want to continue to simplify and keep asking, is our customer happy? If they aren't, how do we make them happy? And if they are, how do we make them happier? It's a pretty simple thing when it comes down to, when it really comes down to it.
So I guess that's this year. In 10 years, are you building this business for succession, or are you building this business for acquisition?
I mean, that's a great question. That's something that I think we're continuing to figure out. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, we're both 31, and that's kind of a big question for anyone. So we both grew up in kind of legacy businesses. Our families, picked one thing and they were just in it. And so I think that holds a lot of opportunity for us and a lot of pull, just thinking about what the opportunity within that is. I think no matter what, you build to sell is kind of what we try to go about each day with, because if you're building to sell, then you're actually building systems that somebody can use. And it's not just, a genius with a million helpers, as the saying goes. So we just want to make sure that whatever we do, it's easily operated and it's a great business. So I know that's about as clear as mud, Jeff, but that's kind of where we're at.
Well, if someone would have asked me that question when I was 31, I don't know if I would have known how to answer it either. But now when I'm 52, I definitely know the answer to that question.
I love it.
It was great talking to the two of you. You have a very interesting business. Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, every time we get on this, we want to be thoughtful and helpful for the listeners. So we want to try to convey we want to help people avoid the mistakes that I've made and that we've made. It's been a grind, like Erin was mentioning, but it's also, we wouldn't change it. We love working for ourselves. We love being leveled up. And the business wise, it does come down to the fundamentals, but it also, with me and Erin, we want to have our priorities straight to be able to choose those. So our number one priority is our faith in Jesus. So that's how that's the foundation of everything that we're doing. So yeah, we may be getting vertically integrated, and we may have different businesses, and we may sell one day, we may keep doing this till we're 110. But our faith in Jesus is that foundation, and that's not going to change. And then our marriage is second. So everything else is after that. But we do have those two priorities in line, and those things are not changing. And then, business is, it's crazy. It's war. It's, it's fun. But those two things aren't changing. So I'd encourage getting your number one thing and your number two thing settled before you try to think, am I selling? Am I growing? Am I shrinking? Am I going to pass along? It's really important that we found.
Well, thank you both for joining us. It was fun learning about Stahla, and I wish you best both in the new year and well beyond.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
so
putting
much,
out
Jeff.
all those awesome pro articles.
Visit Grant and Erin's business online at Stahla.com. And if you'd like to chat with Grant and Erin in person, they'll be at the 2025 Wet Show presenting a seminar on the power of excellent customer service. Thank you for listening to the Pumper and Pro podcast. And please remember to subscribe and like this podcast to keep more great content coming.